able to meet the criteria laid out in the following areas: leadership, planning, customer focus, people focus, process management, supplier partner focus. And certainly as part of the TTC's modernization efforts, it was timely for the Information Technology Services Group to revisit the criteria's improvement across all drivers of the business was being targeted. This award validates their alignment with the TTC's corporate vision of a transit system that makes Toronto proud. And I believe that you are here to maybe say a few words, and welcome to our board meeting. And I'll hand it over to you, Mr. Abadis.
Thank you very much. It is a great honor to be here to present officially the Order of Excellence to the Information Technology Services. We did have a formal presentation a couple of weeks ago on November 1st at the Carlu at the Canada Award for Excellence, but it's great to be able to present it here to the Commission. And I'm actually here on behalf of His Excellency, the Governor General, David Johnson, who, if he wasn't in Cuba with the Fidel Castro funeral, he probably would have been here in person, so you have to put up with me, I'm afraid. But I'm certainly here to extend congratulations from our Board of Directors and our Board of Governors. And certainly you'll need a large trophy case for the award that I'm going to be presenting in a short while. It needs to be pretty big, and we do suggest security at the desk at all times. It's like the Stanley Cup. It has to be secured. So the Order of Excellence, as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, is the highest award that we give for organizations who have not only climbed to the summit of the mountain, not only seen the top of Everest, but have maintained their journey, regardless of changes in leadership and personnel, have gone back up to the mountain and proven that it's sustainable. And the Order of Excellence for Quality recognizes outstanding achievements in organizational excellence. It's under the umbrella of the Canada Award for Excellence, under the Governor General's patronage, and it's the highest certification that Excellence Canada bestows. There continues to be in the ITC organization-wide implementation of the strategic focus of quality through understanding and application of the quality standard. There is a sound, systematic approach across ITS divisions to sustain quality. Key outcomes that we observed in our verification and focus groups that we held was their positive achievements in meeting and exceeding strategic goals, an organization-wide focus on quality. Positive results are being achieved across all the drivers that you mentioned: leadership, planning, customer, employee, and so on, and across all departments in the organization. And more importantly, we found there's widespread, quantifiable improvements that are seen in proactive approaches and practices are being applied. There are numerous leading practices that we observed. I'm not going to mention all of them, but I'll just share a few. The One IT Branding Strategic Plan, the ITS Gartner Score, the Customer Charter, the Project Feedback Board for engaging staff in project implementation, Employee Performance Appraisal Tools, Vendor Performance Review, Business Partner, Customer Relationship Management, Priority Service Queues, so teams are trained to respond to the 800 to 1,000 requests a day, and been recognized, which is very nice, by other major authorities, whether it's in Montreal, Chicago, as leading best practices. So I'm here to really congratulate ITS on satisfying the requirements under the Order of Excellence, and to say that we asked one key question of all the staff, and we said, are you proud to work here? And basically the results came back that 94% of the respondents, or pretty much everybody, either strongly agreed or agreed with that statement that they're very proud to work for ITS, and it certainly proves that the TTC and ITS has a proven transit system that Toronto and all of us can be proud of. So congratulations, and I'll present this to you up at the podium.
Thank you. Please, if you could come forward, maybe a round of applause. And if Anthony Annucci and his team could come forward, and here comes the Stanley Cup of IT. Well, the accolades do not end there. I guess we have to formally have a motion to receive that for information. Commissioner De Laurentiis, all in favor? Clearly none opposed. That carries. Item number 2 is another award presentation. This one is for Best Diversity Program National Award by Canadian Reporter and Thomson Reuters Canada. We're certainly now pleased to welcome Todd Humber from Canadian HR Reporter and Paul Weissman from Vengo. We're here today to present the TTC the Best Diversity Program Award for 2016. The TTC is honored to receive this award. TTC renewed its commitment to diversity and inclusion and developed a 2-year diversity and inclusion plan to support all diverse groups and make TTC's programs and services more accessible and equitable for all. The TTC has developed and launched over 20 new initiatives to support diversity and inclusion for its customers and employees, including but not limited to creating a diversity and inclusion corporate policy, launching new training and diversity and inclusion lens to help managers and employees make more inclusive decisions, developing formal mentoring programs to help support employees, tripling its employment outreach to attract diverse job applicants, increasing the number of job opportunities for diverse applicants through its internship programs, placement programs, and student programs, and in participating in community events to celebrate TTC's commitment to diversity and inclusion. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Todd to say a few words.
Great. Thank you very much. On behalf of Canadian HR Reporter and Thomson Reuters, I just want to congratulate the TTC on this award. The National HR Awards, this is the second year that we've handed them out. We have entries from across Canada. So I just want to stress that winning this award is a very big deal in the HR community. We have some really, really strong nominations that come in from across the country. We had as far west as Vancouver and as far east as Halifax. So there was a lot of competition, so that really speaks to the work that the HR team here at the TTC has done, the quality of the program, and it's nice to see in a city like Toronto that, you know, the TTC, their HR practices really do reflect the citizens that they serve. So just congratulations. And just one note, Paul Weissman is not here, but we have another representative from Vengo, so this is Sally.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Sally Ben, and I'm the Director of Key Accounts at Vengo Inc., Canada's leading provider of group discount programs where we create financial, physical, and mental wellness for organizations. And I'd like to take a moment to congratulate the HR team at the TTC for winning the Best Diversity Program Award. And like you, Vengo has a diverse team, and we celebrate with all of you today. Congratulations once again.
So could I call on Karen, Valerie, Marika, and Morel to come up to receive this award with our CEO, please, and Gemma, and Vince. A motion to receive that information from Commissioner Mihevc. All in favor? Is unanimous, no opposed. Now, this is always an exciting moment. We have with us today several employees, this is item number 3, who are being recognized today, and rightfully so, for their years of service. In some cases, 40 years, 45, and even in one instance, 50 years of service, which I think is remarkable and definitely should be celebrated. I'm going to, we definitely need to do more of this, acknowledge the hardworking men and women who make this system run on a daily basis and who serve the millions of people who ride our system. I'm going to first just mention the people who unfortunately couldn't be here today. We had 40 years of service recipients. We have Anis Pashimam, Robert McMeekin, and Sandra Drysdale. Let's hear it for them. At 45 years of service, unfortunately unable to attend, is Konstantin Kuramalos and Robert Kernigan. And let's hear it for them. Now, for those in attendance, when you hear your name, I invite you to come up, and then we'll certainly give you a sign of our appreciation and recognition. First, and do you mind if I say the dates when people started? Starting in January 1976 is Douglas Chappelle. Congratulations. In March of 1976, Patrick Friel started. In May of 1976, Gino DiPaolo. Is Gino here? Also in May of 76, David Tice. June 2nd, 1976, Gianpiero Gagliazza. July 15th, 1976, Robert Patterson. August 3rd, 1976, Wayne Ferreira, and September 22nd, 1976, Rudolph Wilson. Let's hear it for them. I'm going to call you all back up for a photo, so don't go too far. Now our 45-year service recipient. Starting March 29th, 1971, Bruce Wilkinson. Congratulations on 45 years of service, and thank you. And while we're doing some of these photos, here's I think the really notable and exciting one, celebrating 50 years of dedicated service to the TTC, Tom Caskew, who started July 20th, 1966. And please give a round of applause to Tom. Always eager. Tom, we're ready for you now. And if I could just ask all the recipients to return back up here so we can have a group picture of everyone, that would be fantastic. So just as a slight amendment to item number 3, it is certainly my pleasure to recognize another service milestone. We're also recognizing and celebrating 5 years of service for a plucky young lad who loves cheering for his Exeter City team in England, but really, Palmer told me that one. But really, it's an opportunity to recognize Andy Byford and the work he's done as CEO over the last 5 years. And certainly, we can speak to the fact that he's put the TTC in motion to modernize the organization and the system and the service, the level of service he's added under his leadership over the years, and his efforts to modernize the company and the organization are certainly are obvious. And I think our passengers and the residents of Toronto recognize that contribution. But more than anything, I think he should be commended for certainly not shying away from any of the challenges that this job and this organization present on a day-to-day basis, or in the halls of this building that certainly make it a challenge. And he's done it all with grace and class, and certainly with a ton of effort, and always hardworking, and always certain to give kudos to the team that helps him do that, and has always supported the board and the work we've done to make sure that we provide a transit system that makes Toronto proud. And so it's my great honor, certainly, I feel like this is at a prom or something, but to give a pin to Andy Byford for his 5 years of service. Okay, so I sorry, there is one more amendment here, and this is a really important one. For any of you who have attended a TTC board meeting, who has sat as a commissioner on the TTC board, will know this person, and certainly it's good news for her, but I think bad news for all of us, that Dawn McDonald is retiring, and this will be her last board meeting with us. She's retiring from the TTC after a career that spanned 35 years. She has the all-time record for being hired as an 8-year-old employee at the TTC. And certainly, I know I can express on behalf of anyone who sat in this chamber around this boardroom table how much we appreciate your work, and certainly the poise with which you conduct it, and how unflappable you always are, but certainly just how professional and competent you've been, and how much you've supported the work that this board does and this organization does in ensuring that we provide transit service and a transit system for all of Toronto. So I want to congratulate you on a retirement. I want to thank you on all your hard work over those 35 years. It has not gone unnoticed, and it's very much appreciated. And I certainly think that anyone, again, who's attended the meeting, who's actually used the system, would share in that congratulations. So again, thank you so much for your years of service. Do other board members want to come up for this photo? Wait, good. Kevin, go on. Okay, I think we're done with presentations. Thank you for everyone. I'll move a motion to receive this. All in favor? That carries, of course, unanimously. Item number 4 is the CEO's report, and so I will hand it to our CEO to give a bit of a high-level update, and then open that to questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Another really busy period. I mean, this report takes you up to September, if I remember rightly. A huge amount of activity going on, particularly on our mega projects. So, Chris, we're now up to how many stations? We're around 50 stations now. 58 even on Presto, so powering on with Presto, getting all the stations converted. We're nearly done with all the buses. Streetcars already done, as you know, so Presto powering along. We're up to 26 new streetcars in service. I checked in, as I always do, every board period, checked in with Bombardier. We are still on track for the 30 that they promised us by year end, so I will keep their feet to the fire on that. TYSSE, you heard about earlier, but I'll just highlight for you again for now in public. We should be finishing the station shortly. The tunnel equipping is practically complete. We will soon be moving to getting power on at the end of March of next year. Power will come on, the traction current will be switched on, and we will then move into what's called testing and commissioning and then trial operations. So that's mega project number 3. Number 4, I've just come back from a quick trip to Rochester to see for myself the software that will control our new ATC signaling system on Line 1. That will go live. Line 1 signaling system will go live in phases, and that will kick off next fall between DuPont and Wilson. And then all going well, we will then go to the new signaling system for the TYSSE when that opens at the end of December. So next year will be a super busy year on those 4 major projects. In parallel, 2 other points I'd want to make. Number 1, still pushing ahead with the overall thrust on culture change and on making customers feel valued through better management and through motivating our people. We've done a huge amount of work on the budget. We've now obviously had the board budget meeting, but we now go to City Council and to the city budget process in order to see where that takes us. One thing on budget, you'll recall that the budget, one of the pressures on the TTC budget was ever-rising Wheel-Trans ridership. And just a little statistic for you, yesterday we carried an all-time record number of customers on Wheel-Trans, which was 15,749 rides on Wheel-Trans yesterday. That is without parallel. That is the highest ever. In terms of other items, performance, it's kind of a mixed bag. The last 2 months have actually been better, but you will probably have some questions on the stats that you see before you, which relate to a couple of months ago. One thing I should just highlight, it is topical, it's disappointing, but not surprising to see that the customer satisfaction score has dropped. I wasn't surprised. As I said to the media just now, given the problems that we had through the summer with air conditioning on T1 units on Line 2, it would be very odd if the CSS score hadn't dipped. And it dropped to 70%, which is obviously a setback. It is disappointing. But the good news is we know what the issue is. We know it was related to Line 2 aircon. We know what needs to be done, and we're working now over the winter to get that fixed. So it will pick up again. And don't forget also, please, that we dropped from what was a record customer satisfaction score of 80, 81 in the preceding quarter. So I'm pretty confident that the work we're doing is foundational. A lot of what we're doing, a lot of what Mike's doing, a lot of what Rick's doing will come good as we continue to obsess about detail and drive down the root causes of failure and delay. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Questions, starting with Vice Chair Heisey, Commissioner Byers, and Mihevc.
A couple of questions, Andy. First one is, there was a power failure on Line 2 last week, and I recall now, I just sort of went through the series of major power failures that I can remember in the past decade. Last summer, 2 summers ago, we had some floods and some power failures. We've had this power failure. We had the 2003 power failure. I'd like some comment about how robust the grid is and how much priority TTC operations has in the grid to ensure continuity of subway service during power failure events.
So I will ask Mike Palmer, the COO, to answer that point, please.
Thank you, Andy. Through the chair, if I can describe the incident last Wednesday morning, and you'll understand its uniqueness. In the early hours, we lost the 13,800 AC volt feed at Brigman Avenue, which is a Hydro 1 substation. That took out a large part of the St Clair West DuPont area. We have 2 supplies from that substation, so there's no diversity because both supplies come from the same Hydro 1 source. We lost the 13,800. We stepped that down to 208 volts AC, so we lost that, and we stepped that down to 120 volts AC for the signal main. We have a backup inverter, which takes 600 volts DC, which we didn't lose from our traction power, and it inverts it back to 208 AC to provide the signal power. The inverter didn't kick in because of the transfer switch. So the circumstances were down to one transfer switch. When we went in and tested it, once we were back in business, it took 7 attempts to fail the switch. That's to say, the first 6 times we created a scenario of an outage from Hydro 1, the switch acted correctly, and it took us 7 attempts. So our maintenance regime is robust. We check the inverter, we check the switch, and it's unfortunate that it took us 7 attempts to fail it. You could argue the core issue is not having diversity from Hydro 1.
My next question is, how do we achieve redundancy, which I think is diversity? So we would have an alternate supply from a different substation. Is that possible? Do other systems do that?
Through the chair, I can only answer for other systems where there is diversity. In London, they achieve it through an AC ring within the London Underground network. But you would have to run a diverse supply from the next adjoining substation, and I don't know where that is on the Hydro 1 network.
I don't think the details matter. It's more the principle.
Double feeder stations.
Yeah.
Two sources.
Yeah, the stations we do double feed from different sources, and we have UPS. This is unusual because the backup failed.
Okay.
So, Commissioner Heisey, may I just make one other point? You made reference at the start to how much priority are we given. We are a priority respondent for Toronto Hydro, same as like hospitals and stuff like that. We are very high up on the pecking order. They know that they've got to get us back, and we're typically restored before domestic supply.
Okay, so the next thing I wanted to ask about is the apple of my eye. My 12-year-old daughter was accosted on the subway yesterday, and she was accused of cheating and breaking the law by an inspector because she looks older than 12. She turns 13 in January. The problem for her and for the inspector was she could not provide photo ID for a kid who's 12 with her age on it and a contemporary photograph. And so my question is, how can my daughter get ID that would work with an inspector for someone who's 12? Because I think there's a lot of kids in this situation, and I think it's difficult for inspectors to assess someone's age because there's a full range of appearance with children in the age of puberty. Yeah.
So photo ID isn't required for those children at this moment. They can get a card from their school, so all schools have a supply that gives that guarantee that they are 12 and under, so they can get that at the school.
And the last question is, I noticed in the press this week that Planning Commissioner Kaysmat is promoting the idea of creating asphalt painted surfaces in the landing areas next to streetcars, which has some appeal. But my question is threefold. One, have we been consulted about that? Two, what implications might it have for motorist and customer safety? I don't know if it has any, might not have any at all, but it's just something that occurred to me. Does it create visual confusion, or does it create attention to the area where the passengers are? Do we have a view on this? Are we going to make any representations or comment on this idea, which looks like a good one, but is something that could have implications for our service and our customers? So I don't know who that belongs to.
It probably belongs to me as well under traffic engineering. So I don't believe we have been consulted or approached on that. We would need to be involved and do that work, so we'll make sure that we catch up with the planning team on what their actual proposals are.
Okay. Commissioner Byers with
Thank you.
questions?
And first, Andy, to the organization and the awards we've just seen, those two first ones were very significant awards, so I wanted to kind of extend congratulations to you on their behalf and to your employees and to you as well for 5 years. So thank you and congratulations for all that. Performance, so page 4 of the data, just wanted to, I see on lines 1 and 2, delay incidents, delay minutes, and trains per hour were all down this period for lines 1 and 2, which is unusual. Any either to Andy or Mike, any particular reason for that this period?
As I say in my commentary, no major incidents, typically a series of smaller incidents, although we still had the hangover from running TRs on line 2, which was a good thing to do from a customer's perspective because obviously they had air conditioning, but did impact on the service somewhat. So I'll ask Mike to talk to the detail.
Thanks, Andy. Through the chair. Commissioner, if I deal with YUS first, the number of trains per hour, which is one of my key yardsticks in the rush hour, is broadly the same as period. In fact, it's an improvement on period, a slight reduction in period 8, but it's still higher than it has been, about 23.4, and we scheduled 25.5. Some of this was loaning TRs to BD Line for the hot cars issue. So if they're not on YUS serving customers, we don't count them. The number of customer actions, so that's trespass priority ones, is up. As we speak, we're at 3 priority ones higher than we were for the whole of last year. To slightly put it in context, Q3 for this year, which would be periods 7, 8 and 9, we are down 12%, 2016 over 2014, on the number of incidents. So that's to say on YUS there are 12% fewer incidents than 2 years ago, and we are 25% down on the number of minutes of delay. So although period 9 was not good because of this customer action and a problem on BD, the year is looking very healthy. It's an improvement on last year, and the trend improves from the second part of period 10.
Great, thank you. Flipping forward to page 16.
Sorry, did you want BD as well? Or?
No, that's good. Okay, thank you. Offenses against staff, it's kind of a shocking upward trend in this period, that blue bar way up. I don't know whether, I'm just curious, in terms of protecting our staff, is there anything that, A, any sense of what's happening, and B, anything we can do to protect our staff from these kinds of incidents?
I might just make a general comment, and then I'm going to ask Rick and Kirsten maybe to comment on a particular initiative we have just launched. I think the number of offences on staff, not only the quantum, but the nature of offences is disgraceful. And it's something that I've been speaking with the media about of late, and we're increasingly turning the pressure up on that. Every day people get spat at, kicked, punched, have death threats against them. It is unacceptable. So we're taking a very hard line. In fact, only last week, 2 people went to jail because they assaulted TTC staff. So it's something that I take very seriously, but it needs to be more than just words. So Rick or Kirsten, maybe just describe what we've just kicked off.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, out of the 55 events, we know that 41 of them took place on bus. Just as Andy said, it's people throwing coins, spitting at our employees, throwing food at the employees. It's unacceptable. You've heard in the past how we reallocate our constable force based on the statistics of where events are occurring. So as of this week, we've reallocated constables on certain routes at certain times of day. We're out in the mornings talking to the operators. We're identifying where we want to be the following day. So we're really trying to target these locations. In the last couple of months, we've been very fortunate in the fact there's been a number of arrests made on individuals that have repeated offenses on our operators as well. And we do this through some of the use of the video on board.
Great, thank you. Finally, I saw a news story about actually police officers on streetcars actually checking for distracted drivers. And so I was curious about that. And, you know, I guess there's not, I mean, maybe the Vice Chair, are we aware of that? It's not much we can do to tell the police not to ride our system, but it is perhaps a bit of a distraction for the driver and those on board. Just curious thoughts on that.
Through the chair, I saw the YouTube video footage. It was North York Police jumping on North York buses on a highway, trying to catch drivers at speed in the adjoining lane who were texting or using their phone. And they just jumped on service buses and used the bus as as a hiding place. We've not heard of anything on our side.
This was actually, I'll send it, I think it was on the CBC feed. There was a TTC car anyway, just curious, but I can follow up on that. Thank you.
So, Commissioner, that does occur from time to time. Traffic services will board streetcars. We encourage police to ride the system anyway, so it's not a distraction for our operators. In fact, if they're capturing, if you will, distracted drivers, then that's probably good for all of us.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mihevc, questions?
Yes, thank you very much. 2 questions. One is related to the Bombardier delivery of vehicles. I can't remember seeing an updated list of when streetcars will be, or the new LRVs will be delivered to different routes. Can that be provided?
Yeah, sure.
Simply because we're getting questions, it might be good to distribute it to councillors so that they know, especially the downtown councillors, where routes are. People are asking me, for example, when is it coming to St. Clair, and I don't have a good date.
I mean, the kind of the headline on that is it hasn't really changed in terms of the rollout, but obviously the rollout isn't as quick as we would want because of Bombardier's delays. But they promised me 30 by year end this year, and at least an additional 40, so cumulative 70 by year end next year. And we're and by the way, the end date 204 still 2019. I'm not letting them slip it. So that's their problem. They've just set up a second production run, but we will recirculate the list of rollout by route.
Great, thank you. And then the second question has to do with media reports around the Scarborough subway. And I'm wondering, what is the forum? Like, where are those kinds of decisions as to the route being made? Of course, they used to be made here, but I understand there's some debate as to where the tunnel boring machine is going to be located, and some expropriation issues and so on. Are we not the lead on it from here on in?
The route decision is will come here, but it will also go to the city once staff have finished their work. So if you recall, that we were tasked by City Council to go away and have another look at route options. So we're doing that in conjunction with the city, with city planning. That work is almost complete, and we will need to bring it back to brief you on that.
I see. Are we being briefed when it's kind of done or in process?
More likely when we have reached a conclusion. That doesn't mean to say that's done, though, because ultimately staff make recommendations, city councillors make decisions.
Right. I guess if you could respond, like, my worry is that I understand that there are some, well, one might say non-technical reasons to go one way versus another way, perhaps political reasons. And we would want to, frankly, weigh in as a TTC to make sure that we're doing things for good technical reasons rather than political reasons. And if we're engaged late in the process, the ball game's over. If we're engaged early in the process, then we have an ability to kind of steer the conversation in a healthy direction. And I do think that this board has the capacity to steer things in a healthy direction.
Okay, understood. Rest assured that we're crystal clear as your representatives, as TTC staff. We don't go into these meetings with a political objective. Other people may have that. We don't. Our objective is to advocate for and hopefully secure the best route from a transit perspective. In other words, the one that offers the quickest route with the best interchange, seamless interchange for the biggest number of people. And we continue to make that case.
And at a reasonable cost.
Absolutely.
Okay, when do you expect that report to be coming forward?
Susan?
Likely in January.
Great. Okay, thank
Through
you.
Mr. Chair, likely January.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, we'll go Campbell, then Commissioner Crisanti.
It's in regard to Presto on page 20. It seems we're doing about 650,000 customer journeys per week, 3.26 million in September, which is it's obviously rising at a considerable clip. When do we get revenue from Presto? So that's $9.5 million in revenues, in ticket sales. When do we get that money? And is that delay, so that those are people that are not buying it through our cash box, and I'm just wondering if that's posing any sort of cash flow hiccups, problems, challenges?
I don't know if Chris heard the question, but if I'm understanding it correctly, it's not, we already do get revenue from Presto in that the revenue is attributed back to the agency upon whose vehicle that person taps. So say if it was Brampton or whatever, they get the revenue. Obviously, you have to pay a percentage fee for the use of the system, because it's not our system, it's Metrolinx's system. But the revenue increasingly comes back to us as Presto rollout increases.
I get that. No, but
The fee increases.
we had 3.26 million customer journeys. Those are people that are using the Presto card. When do we get the money? Because the Presto card can be bought a couple of ways. It's either bought through the gateway, or it's bought online. How quickly is revenue recognized for the TTC? How quickly is there a transference of that revenue?
So we get the money. The money is attributed to us when somebody taps, and then we would actually receive that cash within a week or so. We'd receive that value.
So it flows within a week?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not posing any particular, there's no delay, okay, all right. Okay, that's all I had. And in regard to, when will the balance of the buses be complete and the balance of the stations? It's probably, I'm sorry if it's in here and I've missed it.
By the end of the year.
By the end of the
Although, just for clarity, that's by the end of the year for the bus fleet. There will be a few stragglers, buses, for example, that are out long-term maintenance. But for all intents and purposes, the bus fleet will be done by the end of the year. For stations, what we've committed is that every station will have Presto-enabled gates by the end of this year. There will be a couple of secondary exits that need to be done in the spring. But every station, all 69, bar a couple on the SRT, because it doesn't seem to be a lot of point, will have Presto-enabled gates.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Crisanti has questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So pages 3 and 4, station cleanliness, the target is 75%. The target for subway cleanliness is 75%, and bus is 90%. So I'm just wondering, how did we achieve these targets? Are we, in other words, saying that we're okay with 25% not clean? Why not 100%?
Well, it's a subjective score. It's done on we have auditors who go round auditing, and at the end of the day, when they do the audit, if they find something that's untoward, you will achieve less than 100% score. I don't think there's any transit system in the world that has 100% cleanliness scores, where systems used by millions of people a day. But obviously, we aim for the highest. We've made a lot of improvement in this space.
Yeah, I recognize that, and however, I think if we strive to set our goals higher, then there'll be a good likelihood that the customer satisfaction could increase dramatically, because in part, I think most likely people aren't satisfied if they're getting onto a system that's not cleaner than it is.
I'm just trying to find the graph, which shows actually that the cleanliness scores for satisfaction have improved. I don't think setting a target higher automatically drives CSS, because the target itself is kind of meaningless to customers. If you turn to page 24, you'll see that for 2015 we made dramatic improvement. It slipped back a little in 2016, was only just below target, but rest assured, with our excellent team of janitors and the various people who clean the vehicles, we're going to keep focused on this.
Okay, fair enough, thank you. And so over to page 16, and we've already touched on it somewhat. So offenses against customers have decreased, which is a good thing, but however, on the other side of the coin, offenses against staff have increased. How, since the redeployment of TPS, what has the impact been? Has there been some form of measurement to see what has changed since?
I think it's too early to say right now, Commissioner. We're keeping an eye on this, but bear in mind that a lot of these offences are taking place on buses, and you didn't typically have Toronto police officers riding around on buses. Rick, do you want to add to that?
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions? No? To speak? No? I'll move receipt of the CEO's report. All in favor? No opposed? That carries. Thank you. Next item is the ACAT minutes for September 29th, 2016. And I don't know if Mazen has, our ACAT chair has a mic that's
Sure.
good. If you could just, if you don't mind spending a couple minutes to introduce those minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. The highlights of September 29 meeting at ACAT, we actually have highlights within the minutes now, so you can really scan it. A lot of work done through the subcommittees, but I highlighted two items, though, that is not in the September minutes. The first one is there is an issue that recently been raised, and it was also in the media with regards to this new city bike lane project on Bloor Street and other lanes that interfere with the boarding and deboarding of Wheel-Trans customers safely and efficiently. We would like to see a better outcome in this regard by having Wheel-Trans staff to be present at the table when new designs or standards being drafted. And the second item was ACAT gives an enthusiastic support of the recent report titled TO Prosperity Toronto Poverty Reduction Strategy 2016 Progress Report and 2017 Work Plan dated November 16, which will be submitted to the Executive Committee consideration on December 1st. ACAT will also be encouraging the TTC board to endorse it as well when it comes before the board, and we think that this report will make a significant impact for people living on low incomes. The next ACAT meeting is the Thursday, December 22nd, 1 o'clock to 3:30 at 1900 Yonge, 7th floor, and we like to see you there all the time.
Great, thank you. Any questions to staff about the minutes? I will move receipt of those ACAT minutes. All in favor? No opposed, that carries. Thank you. That moves us to item number 8, where we do have a deputant, Bob Kinnear. Oh, we'll just set you up at the. Welcome. This is item number 8, random drug and alcohol testing, and you have 5 minutes. I'll start.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, commissioners, and Mr. Chairman. I, too, on behalf of the 11,000 members who operate and maintain Toronto Transit System, would like to congratulate Mr. Byford on his 5-year accomplishment. Let's just hope that history is no indication of what happens after that. Anyways, best of luck, Mr. Byford. On behalf of the 11,000 members of ATU Local 113, let me stress 2 things about this issue of potential impairment on the job and what to do about it. Since the specific issues on random testing before the Commission today is considered confidential, our remarks must necessarily be in general in nature. First of all, our members feel exactly the same way about this issue as everyone in this room, and indeed everyone in our city. Workers who are not fully capable of safely operating or maintaining a transit vehicle should not be doing so, no exceptions. As a society in which we respect for human life as our very highest value, we must take all appropriate measures that reduce and hopefully eliminate any degree of impairment on the job that could be in any way hazardous. As a union, we have always believed this, and we always will. But a policy of random testing that only measures illicit drug or alcohol impairment is not effective. It's not constitutional, and it promotes a false sense of security that does not adequately protect either the public or the employees. That's number 1. Number 2 is our distress about how this issue is being handled so badly by politicians and officials who are ultimately responsible for public and employee health and safety. Let me give you a couple of examples. Mr. Byford surely knows that sleep deprivation is the number 1 cause of transit workers' impairment. It's not illicit drugs, it's not alcohol, it's sleep deprivation. So why is it that Mr. Byford and the TTC wanted TTC frontline workers to work 70 hours a week? Where did he get that figure from? What century are we in? Because 70 hours a week sounds more like 1860 than 2016 to me. And that 70 hours does not include all the additional time away from home because of travel and the split shifts that many of our employees face. 70 hours a week can easily turn into 85 or 90 hours away from home, away from rest. Thankfully, under Ontario law, the union has to agree to overtime in excess of the statutory work week of no more than 48 hours. And in this case, we said no, no way. The union did finally agree to a maximum of 60 hours a week. We did not feel great about doing this, so we compromised because we recognize that the TTC has a staffing problem and we want to be cooperative. Maybe Mr. Byford can explain why he advocated for 70-hour work weeks and what he thinks about sleep deprivation as an impairment issue. As for random drug and alcohol testing, there are all kinds of problems with the TTC's intentions. Not the least of these problems is a very clear ruling in 2013 by the Supreme Court of Canada in the Irving versus CEP case. Google it and you'll see that the court ruled that random testing is unconstitutional, except in certain narrowly defined situations. Obviously, TTC management thinks it meets the Supreme Court test and could therefore institute random testing. We don't agree. We believe the Supreme Court would rule against the TTC. And how many millions of dollars in legal costs will be spent by the TTC to confirm the 2013 decision? But there is a solution to this problem. For years, our union has urged that we evaluate optical scanners, an existing technology that is used by many transportation authorities for determining whether or not someone is impaired. Optical scanners measure eye reflexes almost immediately and for any cause, and it's a no-fault measure. You might not be completely safe behind the wheel of a bus because you were up all night with a sick child or because you have the flu as I do. We don't need to know the precise reason for your impairment. Public safety is the most important question, not whether or not you had a joint while you were on vacation 2 weeks ago, or whether you are taking a prescription drug that slows down your reflexes. By limiting testing to illegal drugs or alcohol, you're going to miss the #1 cause of impairment, and you're going to send people out on the road who should not be operating a bus. They should probably be at home getting some sleep or fully recovering from the flu. So I implore you to recognize that we are in the 21st century and that there is available technologies that can address the impairment issue in a quick and effective way that will definitely increase public safety in a way that all parties can respect. Thank you. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Thank you very much. You have a couple questions. Commissioner Campbell and then Vice Chair Heisey to start.
So you went to, thank you for your deputation. I'm interested about what you said about the optical testing, but why do you focus so much on the constitutionality of the testing, and what were those narrowly defined situations that the Supreme Court said were okay to proceed along those lines?
Well, I would hope that any Canadian would focus on our constitutional rights and wouldn't
But it's not a
disregard-
constitutional issue, it's a
Well,
safety issue.
no, it is. I mean, it's gone up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that way.
So is that the most important thing, or is it the safety?
Well, it's two-part. The problem that you have in implementing this program is it does not determine impairment at the time of the testing. Unequivocally does not determine impairment at the time of testing. If it did, with all due respect, Commissioner Campbell, if it did, then you would have police authorities and other policing agencies that would be utilizing this sort of testing. They are not, because they recognize that it does not determine impairment at the time of testing.
So my understanding is the TTC is going to use breathalyzers, and isn't that a technology that the police forces use?
Breathalyzers are fine. I'm not here disputing breathalyzers. You may or may not be aware, I would hope that you would be aware, that they are suggesting that it would be tested through a swab.
No, I get, well, breathalyzers will be also part of the testing from what I.
And we have no dispute with, there is lots of factual evidence that supports the fact that breathalyzers are accurate in determining the level of alcohol within the system at the time of the test, unlike the random testing that you and the TTC are proposing.
So you have no objection to random alcohol testing with the use of breathalyzers?
No.
Okay. And you mentioned sleep deprivation. Why would an operator get behind the wheel or assume control of a streetcar or subway if they feel that they're sleep deprived?
Well, that's part of the problem. The individual themselves may not feel that they are impaired or deprived of any sleep, but we know within our industry, and I can talk to you as an experienced operator, because of the numerous shift changes, the alterations of work that is ongoing week after week, that it takes a toll. And there are numerous studies out there that shows that shift work takes a toll on a individual person, particularly in transit. Something else you may not be aware of is that a large percentage of our operators work 12 and a half and 13-hour shifts, in which, conceivably they're leaving home at 4:30 in the morning and not returning till 8:30 at night to do an 8.5-hour shift.
So, no, but and I can appreciate the challenges of a split shift, but in terms of the work time, is it a 12-hour shift or is it an 8-hour shift over 12 hours?
Well, it would be an 8.5 hour over 12 hours. But I would say if you don't think that there's an impact on an individual just because he's not sitting in the seat, but has gotten up at 4 o'clock in the morning and won't return till 8 o'clock at night, I would argue that there is an impact, whether or not they're actually operating or not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Heisey with a question.
So, Mr. Kinnear, you talked about, there's two areas I'd like to talk to you about. One is you talked about what we're proposing, the TTC is proposing, only measures drug and alcohol impairment. And I parse words a bit. So is there other things you think we should measure?
The optical scanner that I had mentioned in my deputation.
But are you measuring, with the optical scanner, are you measuring things other than drug
Sorry,
and
Vice
alcohol?
Chair.
Yes, absolutely.
Could you speak in?
Yeah,
Sorry.
sorry.
Speak into the mic.
I like
sorry.
eye contact. I can't help
No, I
it.
know. It's just no one else can hear. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. Well, sorry, I won't look at you while I ask the
Mr. Chairman, through you, to answer Commissioner Heisey's, Vice Chair Commissioner Heisey's question, it determines impairment for any reason, whether it be sleep deprivation, whether it be any medications that an individual may be taking. It tests the reflexes of the pupils in your eyes, which determines whether or not how fast you react is the determination of impairment.
Does anybody else use this that you know of?
I believe over in the underground, I think they're actually in the midst of proposing it right now over in London. I believe it's used. I have not got that information specifically in front of me, but I know it's something that's had a lot of discussion about, a lot of research has been invested. I know NASA was using it a number of years ago when we first proposed it.
So you would have no objection, your organization, to random testing using this different technology, is that
That's right, because it's not invasive. It's not going to determine what somebody may or may not have consumed 2 weeks ago.
And you have no objection to random testing with breathalyzers for alcohol. So the only thing that we're really talking about, it seems, is the drug swab testing versus a different form of testing which you say captures it better.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I thought I saw another hand for you, Commissioner Carroll.
Yeah, Commissioner Heisey asked most of my questions, though, because we're going to want to look at it in other places. The only question that I have beyond that is whether or not the issue of residual effects being picked up in tests is going to be an issue for the local. You mentioned it in your deputation. Sure. Are we going to be hearing from the local a whole lot of case law about fights about residual effects showing up in tests? Is that what you're flagging for us?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, all you've got to do is do a Google search, I mean, you'll find clinics down in the United States that have had their licensing removed because they weren't forthcoming or accurate in their testing. Here's the other problem, is there is no recourse for the individual. If a test comes back positive, there's no dispute mechanism in order to dispute what may or may not be in that test, other than the TTC sending that swab back to the provider, a provider who we don't know who it is, we don't know how it's being shipped there. There's one other issue that I would like to point out.
You have no choice but to pile up a bunch of grievances.
We're already there, and I think relevant to your question is we have a collective agreement, which Mr. Byford and I are party of, in which we have a dispute resolution mechanism within the contract, and it's called arbitration, in which both parties have been litigating this case for 5 years now. And that is the process within our collective agreement. What's happening now is the TTC is taking the position that we're going to ignore the fact that we're party of a collective agreement that we've signed, and we're going to arbitrarily implement this policy despite the parties having spent millions of dollars already in litigation, which is only going to be compounded now.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Commissioner Mihevc has questions.
Yes, so, Bob, Mr. Kinnear, your position is that you're not against random testing in and of itself. You're against random testing when the technique used for random testing, in your view, may produce insecure results. Is that the long and the short of it?
I think we're getting into testing and focusing on testing. We're talking about impairment. Let's look at the core of the problem. The core of the problem is impairment. And yes, Commissioner Mihevc, we as a union and an organization, and we've said this numerous times, are of the mindset that we want to do everything that we can to improve the safety and eliminate impairment of any kind. Why we're in dispute of this proposal is because we know as transit workers it will not eliminate the number one impairment that transit workers have, which is sleep deprivation. And secondly, we have no assurances of the conclusions of the test, not to mention the levels in which the TTC would prescribe to the carrier who's doing the test, whether or not that actually determines impairment. We have several experts, including the leading expert in Canada, who has advised us that the limitations that the TTC are applying would suggest that if you had 100 people that met that threshold, 95 of them, 95%, would not be impaired at the time of the testing. They may have an indication of what they may have consumed over the last 3 or 4 days, but will not determine impairment at the time. And we are in full support of eliminating impairment within the transit industry.
Okay, and your view is that like technology, or what is it called, that
Optical scanners?
optical scanners, that technology, so if that technology was shown to be effective, the union would be okay with it being applied randomly?
We wouldn't have a problem with that. I mean, you could set something up where people, now, the TTC and the commission may have a major problem with it, and the problem that they would have is that we would recognize very clearly within our industry that it is in fact sleep deprivation. I would probably suggest that you're going to have a higher percentage than we would all like to acknowledge that would not pass that test because of sleep deprivation and other factors related to our industry.
Okay, great, thank you very much.
Other questions? I just have one, maybe two quick ones. Obviously, we've kind of heard the point about, the number one impairment is sleep deprivation, and that's kind of the thing that we need to check for and be conscious of. But at the same time, you signed off on a 60-hour work week, which you yourself said contributes to sleep impairment. Despite signing off on that, what would be your ideal amount of hours in a week then? Is it 50 the right number? Is 48 the right number?
I would suggest that, listen, in our hours of work, any normal operator in the transportation department on a regular week works anywhere from 40 to 52 hours on a regular shift. So we would suggest that it probably should be somewhat lower, probably somewhere between 50 and 60 hours is somewhere in which as an organization we would feel comfortable.
If the sweet spot fell between 50 and 60,
It's definitely not 70.
Okay, but you signed off on 60.
Yep.
And still yourself said that contributes to sleep deprivation amongst our operators. If, say, the number is 55 as the halfway point, would your members be okay with 55?
Well, again, and I pointed this out with all due respect, Mr. Chairman, that there are variances between individuals. Some individuals function very well on 5 hours. Some of us need 8 hours. So there's variances depending on the individuals.
But would your members be okay with the 55-hour week you're kind of promoting right now?
In what respect? I'm not sure.
Well, you would have to approve that, and you're suggesting that 55 is a more appropriate work week, length of a work week of those hours. Would your membership be okay with if it ended up being 55 hours and they weren't going to make the money that they might, or at 60 or 62 or
Well, I can tell you very clearly, they weren't happy with us reducing it to 60. They were not happy. Individual people want to maximize their income to support their families. I think we can all recognize that. But it's important that there are parameters in place that ensure that people don't cross those boundaries and enter into places where they're not actually capable of fulfilling the obligation of that many hours.
I got you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we've probably exhausted all the questions. Thanks for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, so now we'll go to questions of staff. I just want to caution commissioners to remember that the bulk of what we've discussed is on your purple pages, where you had an opportunity to ask all those questions. So I just give you that caution to start.
Process-wise, point of order. I'm just wondering, I think it would be fair to say that there is some new information and new input here, and I would feel more comfortable, given our legal requirements, to go into camera again to ask questions rather than ask them in a public setting where I think my guess is that our solicitor will say it just gets complicated in public.
Okay, so then I'm taking that as a motion you're moving to table this so that we can go back into camera on this item for an additional round of questions.
At the end of the, perhaps at the end of the meeting. Open meeting.
The end of the open meeting. Is that all in favor of that motion? Okay, that carries. So we're going to hold off on number 8 till that point. So that moves us to item number 12, procurement authorization amendment, purchase of 285 40-foot low-floor clean diesel city buses. Questions to start from Commissioner Mahevic.
Councilor Crescenti held it.
I held it.
Oh, you held it, so we'll start with Crescenti.
Yes.
And then Mahevic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So how large is the bus manufacturing industry? How many people in the business?
I don't think, without notice, we know the answer to that, Commissioner. We know that there are a number of companies involved. How many employees they have, I have no idea. There are a number of players. Nova in Saint-Eustache, Quebec. You've got New Flyer in Winnipeg. How many employees they have?
I'm not asking about how many employees.
Entities.
How many entities?
Oh,
how many-
entities. Oh, I'm sorry, I
How many
misunderstood your
people
question.
out there
So you-
that build buses?
Okay.
Because I noted in the report that there were only 2 responses on such an important bid and a large amount.
Yes. So there are a number of manufacturers. You have Nova in Quebec, you have New Flyer in Manitoba and Winnipeg. There are a number of other suppliers out there as well, and you'll see from the paper that where we are recommending that we exercise an option with Nova Bus for this order. We have also put out a RFP to the wider industry in order to gain a more competitive bid when we move forward for the next order.
However, this bid went out to the wider industry as well? Or not?
Well, as the paper says, there's what we're asking for in this paper, the 285 is actually us exercising an option with Nova, as previously authorised by this board. There was always the provision for an option. We're now asking to exercise that option.
So we've done business with Nova, we know who they are and how well they perform.
Very much so.
And so we're comfortable with that selection. Also, we done business with the second one in line, New Flyer?
New Flyer in the past, yes, we have. And it's certainly our intention, to put your mind at rest, to have a much more competitive field going forward, which is why, although we're exercising the option or asking to exercise the option for this purchase, when we move on to the bigger order, which relates to buying buses under PTIF, we are going to be looking to, if you turn to page 8 of the report, we're going to put out an RFP to have a much wider response from the other manufacturers in North America. Have a look at page 8.
I'm looking at that, yeah.
And that says there that we're going to release an RFP in Q1 of 2017, and we will be putting that out amongst all of the bus manufacturers.
Yeah, I saw that. And clearly, you're also comfortable that they have a proven record to be able to deliver on time and, of course, what's so critical, on budget.
Rick may want to comment on that, or
if there's been any
Rich?
issues in the past.
I'm going to ask Rich Wong to comment on that, please. Rich is our head of bus maintenance.
Okay, so we've been ordering from Nova for the last couple of years, and so far they've been on time and on budget, so we have really no issues with their performance at the moment.
All right, but they have been delivering on time and on budget, is that what you said?
Yes, they're actually a few weeks ahead of schedule in their current delivery.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Crisanti. Commissioner Mihevc.
Yes, I'm trying to figure out how this fits into, call it our master bus plan. Are these largely replacement buses?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. It's a one-for-one replacement.
So they're all replacement buses?
That is correct.
Okay, so then placing this in the context of the next order, are you anticipating, will you be bringing to us a report on a, 10-year procurement strategy that will take into account a 2% increase in buses, a 3% increase in ridership on buses, and so on, that will help us then determine what's the right number in terms of the order before the next order is placed? Or do you already know how many we need in the next order?
So we're bringing a ridership growth strategy early in the year that will determine how many buses we would need to accommodate ridership versus the number we would need to continue to maintain our fleet. As it stands right now, with the exception of a potential interim bus garage, we are fleet constrained until we have somewhere to put these things. So actually, even if we wanted to use some of these buses for more service, actually we really can't. But that ridership growth strategy will help us determine that.
Right, so that ridership growth strategy then feeds into the next contract and, okay, great, that's good, thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Campbell.
What's the delivery date of these buses?
So all these buses would be delivered, and including the option we're going out for. Plan is to have 783 buses delivered to the TTC between now and March 31st or thereabouts of 2019, so that all these vehicles would qualify under the PTIF agreement.
Well, when will we start receiving the buses? You said between now and then.
Well, you'll place the order.
Right. When will we start taking delivery?
Okay, Rick.
Through you, Mr. Chair, next May, the first of the 97 start arriving, and the option will just continue on from there right up till the March 31st of 18.
So, do we ask our customers for feedback on how they feel about their buses?
We do, both through customer satisfaction survey, but also we've conducted focus groups and done studies with various other transit agencies to understand what constitutes best practice, how you can align your seating, how much space you need, all those sorts of things. We test all of those with customers.
And has that sort of feedback ever been presented to the commission, the commissioners? And in terms of, I'm wondering if there are any particular themes that passengers, I mean, we carry a lot of people on buses. Are there any particular themes that we can gauge from what they're saying about what they like or do not like about buses, and whether or not we're trying to incorporate some of that in the design of the buses that we're buying?
There are themes, and in actual fact, you know, this option that we're exercising now has some of that built into it, but it's that next procurement where we are asking for a whole range of options so that we can make decisions on those sorts of things in terms of seat layout and everything else.
So that's the next one that we...
That's the next one. So that would be the next 500 that we order beyond these.
So this, what we're doing here, this is a bus that we've already, that there be no design improvements or changes to this 285 that we're buying. This is a sort of a stock item, if you will, stock model that we've already bought into and designed?
For the most part, yes. We may always make tweaks to individual things, and we may make some tweaks to the layout of seating. It's something that we're looking at right now. And we're also thinking about, and maybe this is a good time to put this up now, we're thinking about reviewing our bus livery. So that bus that you see there is a simpler, cleaner version of the paint scheme that we have now. So we're going to be introducing that simpler thing that takes its design cues from the streetcars. So we're actually going to be changing some of that, and that's driven by some of our customer feedback as well.
Oh, good, okay. And then lastly, from a technology standpoint, will these buses arrive delivered complete, or will there still need to be some retrofitting done of various technologies, whether it's, you know, GPS or Presto or what have you?
So when the buses arrive, there's some proprietary equipment that TTC needs to put on. Some of these types of equipment are in low supply, so we do need to transfer them off the old fleet onto the new fleet. Just the example is like the current CIS system, it's the communication system, and the fare box, if we're going to continue with the fare box and the Presto system.
Ah, the fare box. Right. What are we doing with the fare box? We won't need a fare box, right?
Some point.
Well, as it stands now, we will still be collecting cash on these buses. We're coming back to this board in December with some proposals on what we should do about cash collection on surface vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Carroll.
So I'm just wondering how, in choosing the proponent today, are we logging in just with respect to the numbers, or are we setting in motion here any provisions for extension? Because we still have, these are replacement unit for unit, and we have a program, but we still have that outstanding issue of whether or not, in fact, we need, I think it's grown. It started out as, do we need 60 more than what we originally planned? And then I think that number's grown. Does the winning proponent here end up having a sort of right of first refusal extension
No.
to that?
So to be clear, we placed an order with Nova in the past.
Right.
This is exercising an option on that procurement.
And this is the end of all options?
This is the end of this Nova procurement. And so you'll see on page 8, we talk about early in the year, we're going to be issuing an RFP for the next bunch of buses, and Nova can bid on that like anybody else. So this is, and part of what we're trying to do is to lock in as quickly as we can to get our place in the manufacturing line, so we get as many of these buses as we can under PTIF. Because under PTIF, they're 50-cent dollar buses instead of 100-cent dollar buses. So we need to lock in and exercise this option, and that's what we're trying to do, to lock that in. The next RFP is also, we're trying to bring that thing back here as quickly as we can, so we can place that order as quickly as possible to get as many of those delivered under PTIF as well. So here's an exercise of options on an existing contract. There's an RFP going out in months for the next order.
Right, but we know RFPs go out and there are all the various locked-in timeframes. If we know we need more than we originally thought, was there any discussion of trying to fit that additional 60 into this last option?
So the next order might be for 400 or 500. So the RFP that's going out is a big order.
But it might not happen, but really begin
So
production
we've already
for a couple of
talked to
years?
some of the big manufacturers in North America, and they're aware we're going out with this RFP. And so we want to get our RFP out and locked in, because every transit in Canada is trying to buy buses to maximize their PTIF dollars, just like us.
Which is why I'm concerned
So
you'll
we're-
get caught short. That's
So
why I'm
we're
asking.
pretty comfortable with the RFP schedule and timing we have, that it gives us, that gets us pretty close to the front of the line. But, you know, if that RFP was out today, we'd be even better off, but it isn't. And we think the timing there is pretty ambitious, and that the manufacturing companies are telling us they're good with it. In fact, Nova's telling us that this exercise and this option guarantees us a bunch of buses, that if we waited a few months, we wouldn't be able to get even this number of buses from them, because others would fill those manufacturing slots.
Okay.
Other questions to speak? No, not to speak. Okay, I will move recommendations 1, 2, 3, 4, as laid out in the staff report, to authorize the procurement of 285 new buses. All in favor? That, I hope, is unanimous. It was. Item 13, held by, I can't recall, Mahevic? Campbell. Presentation available. No, we can do that, if commissioners want a brief overview. Do commissioners want a quick presentation? I'm not seeing heads being nodded, so why don't you start with questions?
So I guess my question's, this is asking us to spend $75,000 to hire a consultant to do work that I'm wondering why we don't have the expertise on staff to do. And so what do we expect the consultant will find? And, I understand we're looking at the land at this Hillcrest complex, but I don't really understand, what our expectations are for the expenditure of $75,000.
So through you, Mr. Chair, on page 5 of the report, it identifies 2 sections to the review. Item 1 is one that we're proposing to do internally, and it's the second item that we believe outside assistance would help us, and that's reviewing the building conditions, constraints with regards to OP zoning, land use regulations, and site circulation, traffic studies, and then also kind of what's happening on the outside of our perimeter or potential for outside of our property perimeter that may have impact on those lands just inside of our property.
So I see that, but we have, talking about the official plan, zoning, land use regulations, we have an army of planners here at City Hall. We have a huge real estate portfolio citywide, large real estate organization. I don't know why we don't have the professional expertise in-house to do the whole thing, and then come back with a recommendation as to what needs to be done. Or is this like trying to reaffirm something that we already know?
It's not reaffirming anything that we already know. It's trying to make sure that we have maximized the potential of the property for TTC's use. With regards to external expertise, there's some development components. There's reviewing the development potential outside of the property that we're not aware of. The traffic studies are not for internal circulation, is not really our areas of expertise. Susan, did you want to?
No, but, well, all right, that's fine. I guess that's the answer I'm going to get. I just, in terms of reviewing building conditions to determine the feasibility, do we not have people within the scope of the City of Toronto to determine building conditions?
Commissioner, maybe I'll have a go at this. We do, of course. The point we're making is this is a multi-dimensional study that we think it would be more efficient to get someone in. Okay, $75,000 is $75,000, but we feel that it would mean that you would get a more comprehensive study, crossing boundaries of things for which we do have expertise, but also areas that are outside of expertise, in order to come up with a meaningful study that would, we think, make best use of the Hillcrest complex going forward. So for some seed money, we'll get a much better report rather than what we could cobble together between people within our organisation who know some bits, people in the city who know some bits, and some areas where we really have no expertise at all.
So what do we expect to learn, though? All right, let's say we learn that we can rezone it and, there is redevelopment potential. What then? Let's say the consultant comes back with that information that, that this is what we can do with the land, there is redevelopment potential. Perhaps we could rezone it from employment to, mixed use or something like that. But my understanding from reading the report is that we need this property. So
we do.
So we need
do,
the property.
But by having an informed, multidisciplinary review by a consultant that knows what they're doing and knows the right questions to ask and the right areas to study, we believe that we will get a much more comprehensive analysis of both what we could do on the Hillcrest site and, if there's some zoning potential to redevelop part of it, what could be put to use in other ways. And so we just think for the money, it's actually going to pay itself back.
Are we hoping
over many times by having a better report than we could put together ourselves?
Okay. Are we hoping to perhaps have the option of building over what's there?
That's a possibility. As item 2 suggests, analyse the redevelopment potential of Hillcrest complex, because we've previously come before this board to say we've got these various accommodation needs. Well, Hillcrest seems to me to be an obvious candidate to actually make better use of the existing footprint. And in order to do that, it's not all within our own gift to just say, well, let's just do it. We'd need external advice. To have a consultant who can ask the right questions and pull it all together for 75 grand, my advice would be it's money well spent for what it could potentially bring in.
Okay, and then my last question, I guess, is if we're approving this now, it's November, we're not expecting, what is the next step in the process in terms of hiring a consultant?
We would be looking at through the regular RFP process and pulling together the appropriate team to do the study. And just a clarification, with regards to rezoning, one of the constraints or restrictions on this property is the height. And so is there an opportunity, one of the questions is there an opportunity for a greater height, more stories? And first, is that something that we want? And secondly, is that something that's possible?
Well, if it's zoned employment,
yes.
Does that mean there is a height restriction? Because I would think that there's no restriction if it's employment, because you could put office over it, couldn't you?
There is another height restriction that's specific to this property, and there's actually 2 different areas. One is 3 to 4 stories, and another one's 4 to 5 stories.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
And just for clarity, in case anyone misunderstood what I said, this is all for TTC use, okay? I don't want to give the impression that we're talking about letting off or selling off parts of Hillcrest for something else. We're not. This is making better use for TTC of our facility.
No, I get it. There's no townhouses going in there. I get that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, questions, other questions? No? To speak? Commissioner Mihevc, do you want to go before him, Commissioner Carroll?
Well, I really just wanted to say briefly to try and assure Councillor Campbell that we've had similar things in my area, not with respect to TTC properties, but where city properties sit in the midst of employment lands. And in fact, some of the examination that needs to be done, particularly in that analysis of item number 2 on number 5, the third nugget of item number 2, I really can vouch for staff. The only way to really get the kind of advice that was going to be useful to us and stand up to any challenge under our various municipal comprehensive review rules was to go with outside consultants. It's one of those gaps that we hear about that puts the waiting list in planning reviews that go beyond specific applications. It's this type of analysis as to risk that they just don't have the resources to do. So while it seems like we have a lot of staff, we don't have this particular staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Mihevc?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to move the recommendation. I think it's the right move to look to see what TTC can do at this site. We're an expanding organization, and there are ways in which this can can make more efficient our operating requirements. There is, if you know that site, I know it because it's in the heart of my ward. It's one big parking lot on the Bathurst frontage, and if there is a better use for that, then I'd certainly like to know about that. Will there be a need for a community conversation in Ward 21 in the surrounding area? Of course there will be. Of course there will be. And will there need to be perhaps a community benefit of some sort? Perhaps. But I think that's what you hire an outside planner to do. This is no different, frankly, than any developer that comes to City Council. They have a planning consultant that helps them through the process. And here, you can't ask the city to be the planning consultant. We're acting on the city side. It's the TTC is the applicant, and the city is in the planning department is the regulator. They're going to process the application to see if there's a committee of adjustment required or a whole rezoning or whatever, depending on what plans come forward. So I think this is all, frankly, quite appropriate. But, you know, I'm just telling folks that there, as well as using my hat as the local councillor, that this application, like any other in the private sector, there's local community that you have to contend with, and it has to fit the scale and model, and you have to do the traffic studies and so on, and you also have to talk about what the local community benefit would be. And I might have an idea about that.
Tell us.
To speak?
So I understand what Commissioner Carroll is saying, but and also what Commissioner Mihevik is saying. But I guess as a taxpayer, I look at the City of Toronto and its increasing thirst for revenue, and I think the taxpayer would have to wonder, why can't, and perhaps this is why we're undergoing a citywide real estate review, to look at everything, to pull into all the different areas of and agencies of the city and expertise of the city, so maybe we don't have to hire outside consultants when in fact we have that breadth and depth of knowledge within our own staff. And I think that the average taxpayer has to wonder, why do we need to spend $75,000 to pull something together when we do have just a wealth of understanding and knowledge within our own offices here at City Hall and Metro Hall and beyond. So I'll go along with it. I get the idea that we want to get it done quickly. We want to make a decision on it, but perhaps one day we'll get to the point when we have this citywide real estate review that we won't need to go outside to get this kind of information.
Thank you. Any other speakers? No? Commissioner Mihevik will move staff recommendations. All those in favor? None opposed, that carries. We're on to item number 14, which is back to Hillcrest. It's the procurement authorization for the Hillcrest Complex for a streetcar way facility replacement and Harvey Shop loading dock contract. And it was held by Commissioner Crisanti.
Correct.
Questions of staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, we have a substantial contract here where it looks like 21 companies actually downloaded documents, of which 13 companies attended the mandatory site tour, and 4 were certified, and then 2 additional ones said they're not going to be bidding. So we're left with only 2. Is this typical? Looks, and to try and get a competitive bid, which was something we should always strive for, now we're just down to two bidders. Is this a typical
So
situation?
I wouldn't say it's typical. I mean, you'll see an order, the next contract there's 4 bidders on that. The one after that, there were 6. Sometimes I think it's the technical nature of it. I mean, we would rather more than 2, but 2 better, much better than 1. We were here at a previous meeting where we explained all the things we've been doing with the construction industry to try and work to increase the number of bidders. And I think this one we would like to have seen more, but if you look at the series of these contracts together, where if you went back probably a couple of years ago, I think 1 and 2 was more the norm. Now 4, 5, 6 is more the norm, and this one we just happen to get 2, and it may well be because some of the same bidders on these contracts that they're deciding, well, I want to bid on that one rather than this one. So we got a fair bit of stuff going through here at the same time, and that's my take on it. I don't know whether our acting head of procurement would want to add any comment to it about why there weren't more. But that's, I think if you look at all the contracts together, we're getting a decent number of very qualified bidders. This one, I wouldn't mind one or two more, but we still got two pretty good bidders and companies where we've done business with and comfortable with.
All right. Does our procurement policy capture the concept of on time and on budget, which is something, of course, we should always be watching very, very closely?
Certainly, all of these contracts, a requirement would be for the contractor to provide a construction schedule. They would all have delivery dates, opening milestones in that. They would have dates by which they're supposed to turn it over to us substantially complete, and occupancy dates. And each of these contracts have liquidated damages to ensure or give force to those schedules. And every one of these, one of our construction contracts, we have performance bonds and/or letters of credit that we also utilize to provide contract security.
All right, that's great going forward, but I was actually asking in terms of when it's down to just two bidders, when we started off with 21 and we somehow narrowed it down to just two, in terms of their performance in the past, I suspect we've done business with both of these two, Butcon and Bonfield, in the past?
Yes, we have.
And yeah, so and they how are they performing there in terms of their performance? Are they over budget? Are they on time? Have they performed to the point where we're comfortable moving forward with the one we've chosen?
So I think we are comfortable with the one we've chosen. Maybe I'll ask Mike if he wants to add a comment to it in terms of whether we've done a specific. I mean, if we're unhappy, there will be a vendor performance evaluation on record that says we're unhappy, and we will either put some restrictions on them or we will have disallowed them from bidding on us for some point in time. But I'll ask Mike if he wants to add a comment to this.
Thank you, Vince. Yes, actually, we're very satisfied with both Butcon and Bonfield, the two respondents on this. They both have satisfactory performance reviews on file, many construction jobs for the TTC.
Okay, so then I read into that they have delivered on time all the time and on budget. Is that how what you're describing to me?
That's a difficult question to answer because there are many changes, contract changes that may impact the original schedule. So based on those changes, we're satisfied with their performance.
All right. And if the performance was such that we're, of course, not satisfied, then they would not be considered. Because both these contracts, I note here on the last page that they're within less than $100,000 apart.
And that was a very competitive bid, yes.
Yep.
And you will see in the next reports, we actually have disqualified a poor performing contractor from any further awards because of their performance.
Okay, then what are the conditions you would disqualify a contractor? What would have to take place?
Be your last question for this round.
Fine. Thank you.
Well, definitely if it's unsatisfactory, if they're not performing on time and on budget and their actual quality of performance and meeting the requirements of their obligations and requirements of the contract, such as deliverables, et cetera.
You probably asked some of the similar ones and the other ones
Yes.
you've held too. So other questions to speak? Mahevik, Carol,
I'll move the
Commissioner
recommendations.
Do you want to speak, Commissioner Carroll?
Yeah, just briefly.
Okay.
Just briefly, I'm satisfied on contracts of this size, so long as the performance evaluation is harmonized with the contract performance evaluation at the city. And my understanding from my questions last year in this commission is that they are. And we've had, it may be why things are sometimes quiet, we've had great culture change from having actually applied sanctions in a number of cases in the last couple of years. And so people are clear about the terms, show up on time for the on-site tours, and it may be why the bids may have few proponents, are extremely competitive, but we are getting compliance.
Great, and Commissioner Mahevik, to speak, Vice Chair Heisey?
I'm just going to make an observation that I have shared Mr. Crisanti's concerns in the past. I've seen $20 million contracts with only one bidder. We couldn't find other people to bid. I don't have a criticism of anybody, but I do have a concern which I don't know how to bring to a conclusion about how we place contracts out to tender and why it is that we've got, it's something that the board before you got on it tried to grapple with and we never got to it, and it's something maybe this board should try and get to, just how to change our procurement bid process to see if we can get more tenders.
So if I could add a
Sorry,
comment to
we're-
that, sorry, okay, sorry.
Any other speakers? I'll just speak now. It's a good conversation to have, and certainly Vice Chair Heisey mentioned the previous board, and I think this one has turned their mind to it. I just want to remind people, this board has set up a procurement working group, which many members of this commission are on, and that procurement working group actually has delivered a lot of the changes to our process, both procurement process, our relationship with the industry, our relationship with players, to ensure that you are getting more bids. And so if you look at today's agenda, if you ever did want evidence of some of the work that's been done by many of you around this table with staff, that we are getting more bids on work that was alarming a couple of years ago when like basic civil jobs and other construction work would only get one or two bidders. We've even actually had a return of contract GCs and other contractors who for years have not been bidding on TTC work, who are now back in the fold and doing so. And so I think these are good questions to ask and things that we should stay on top of to make sure that we're getting the best price and robust tenders and bids. But I think what you see today in all of these items that have been held by Commissioner Crisanti that we'll discuss, if you were to see a similar board document 2 years ago, it would tell a very different story. Not to say that we can rest on laurels or the progress we've made, but there is a forum for that, and if there are other ideas or work people want to do, I certainly would welcome you to sit with your fellow commissioners on that procurement working group. So Commissioner Mahevik has moved the staff recommendation. All in favor? None opposed. That carries. So we move on to item number 15, procurement authorization, Duncan Shop ventilation upgrade. Commissioner Crisanti.
Yes.
Go for it.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Just a couple of questions. So pleased to see here that we have, four bids in. And I was just wondering what you mean on page 6 when you say that their bid is considered commercially acceptable. I have an idea what you mean by that, but can you explain it, please?
Sure. So commercially acceptable means that they have met all of the requirements of the bid. So they've got a bid bond, they've got an agreement to bond, they've bid a clean bid that has no exceptions on it, and that we've done whatever analysis we need to do to confirm that they have sufficient work elsewhere that proves to us that they've got the capacity to do it, the references turned out well, and there was absolutely no reason why we wouldn't award this contract to them.
Okay. And of course, this applies to all others that we spoke of and all the ones we're going to speak of, right?
If they're being awarded, it's because they're commercially compliant, yes, sir.
Okay. So what's interesting here on page 11 is, well, first let me ask, have we ever done business with Geo Kelson, the last one?
I don't recall. I'll ask Mike Piemontez I don't recall the name of that company, but Mike, are you familiar with that contractor? Or any of the construction folks?
So
yes, they're actually a mechanical contractor. They're a prime for mechanical, and no, we haven't done direct general contracting work services through them. They have been a subcontractor in many of our prime contractors, but not directly with them, no.
So the reason I'm asking is that I'm always a bit concerned when I see such a spread on a bid that's it looks like in excess of $11 million from the lowest to the highest. We have to assume they all got the same information. They all attended site meetings. They all understand the scope of work. So I'm concerned when now we have a bid that we've chosen, whether or not the one that has been, the selected one that has been chosen, will be able to deliver again on budget.
Okay, so what I would say is that Black & McDonald is a very well-known contractor to us and to the city. They've done all kinds of work for the TTC. I would be more concerned if their bid was 36.7 and everybody else was north of Geo Kelson. But I look at Butcom and State, and two other contractors are very well known to us, do a lot of work with us. And their bids are, higher, but they're more in line with the Black & McDonald one. So I think what you see, maybe Kelson is a company that's trying to make some inroads here. Obviously, based on this particular contract, they would need some better pricing. What you also don't know is the circumstance of the contractor. Black & Mac may simply be finishing another job and have some resources around, and rather than dispose of those resources, they could reassign them here. So that's part of what the bidding process gives you. It gives you consistent pricing, and sometimes you get really good pricing from really good contractors like Black & McDonald.
And of course, your due diligence for Black & McDonald came out, green light, good history, and acceptable.
Very much so. They are a well-known contractor to us, and they're doing work for us on the TYSSE at the moment, which is of exceptional standard, I'd say.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. If there are no other questions, I can move it.
Are there any other questions, Commissioner? So, and Commissioner Crisanti will move the staff recommendation. All in favor? None opposed? That carries. Item 16, which is the procurement authorization for easier access Phase 3 for St. Patrick's Station, held by Commissioner Crisanti. We'll start with questions from him.
So again, similar questions. I believe on this one, we have 11 of 22 companies that actually bid it. I'm looking for the chart here. I don't see it. Is that correct? Is it 11? No. Actually, 7 companies bidded on this one, correct?
I think it is seven. We received 7 bids, which is a very healthy number.
Yeah, this is certainly, I agree, one of the better ones, and it's good to have something to select from. And just once again, you're fully satisfied that the lowest bid here also passes the test of having an excellent record of delivering on budget and on time when we need it.
So as is the case with all of them, we will do a reference check. The reference checks would have come back favorable and successful. We would have checked their bidding or their bonding capability. We would have checked for a bid bond, their agreement to bond. And based on all those things and the fact that their bid, they understand the work, and there's nothing in their tender to us that would suggest there's any problem, that on the basis of that, when we go out, when we put a tender out, that's called Contract A. If they meet all those requirements satisfactory back to us, that's called Contract B, and we award. So A plus certainly wouldn't, if there was something that came back and said these people cannot do the work, or there was the city, for example, had blacklisted them, then that would have been a reason for us to not proceed. There was nothing about this contractor's performance and the recommendations that suggested to us they can't perform this work.
Do you update this board on the progress of all these contractors and how they're performing, say, 6 months from now?
Sure. I mean, we have no trouble doing that. We could take, it's the progress of all these contracts are built into our capital project reports that are in the CEO report. But if if you had some interest on these particular contracts to get some kind of reporting back over 6 months on how they're doing, we could do that. Some of these are longer term than that. 6 months would be, you certainly get a sense of how the contracts are starting.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Then I'm fine.
Great. Other question from Commissioner? No. Commissioner Byers to move the staff recommendation. All in favor? That no opposed. That carries. We're on to item 17, which is the procurement authorization for Lakeshore Garage bus hoist replacement contract. I'll hand it over to Commissioner Crisanti for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, just very, very, very similar questions. And again, we did our due diligence. We're down to 3 selected contractors. It looks like all the numbers are coming in real close. We have experience directly with Maystar General?
Yes, Maystar has done work for TTC in the past, and it was of a similar type size and nature, and it was satisfactory.
Okay. That's all I have on that one, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to move that.
Okay, if there are no other questions or anyone wants to speak on it, it's been moved by Commissioner Crisanti. All in favor? None opposed? That carries. Item number 18, procurement authorization, Davisville Car House, held by Commissioner Crisanti. I'll start with his questions.
Again, we have a bid process here that resulted in a number of bidders that to select from. So I'm just looking at the selected bidder, and my questions were answered previously, so I'm happy to move this item right now. Thank you.
Other questions? Anyone to speak? So staff recommendation moved by Commissioner Crisanti. All in favor? Opposed? None? That carries. Number 19, procurement authorization, supply of genuine OEM Cummins parts for buses, held by Commissioner Crisanti. Questions of staff?
Right. This one here, I found it a bit more complex, so I'm just wondering, it looks like it might be, due to the nature of this particular bid, a sole source type of bid. Is that correct? I see many
no, that's
moving
not correct.
parts
What
here.
this is a supply of parts, and so what we do is if you would go to Appendix A, which is on page 5,
Yes.
we'll have a whole long list of line items, and we put that out, and companies are free to bid on any or all of those line items, and the awards made on, as it shows on page 5 under Appendix A, represents those companies that are providing those parts at the lowest price.
However, have we had several bids come back? I don't.
So, yeah, I mean, you have to go through, but in each case, you would get, I mean, if you took out of the total quoted parts, Ashcon quoted on 603, they're getting recommended for 7. Aftermarket parts bid on 418, they're getting recommended for 10. You will see that Cummins, in the middle, is getting the overwhelming majority of the parts, but there are, clearly Ashcon bid on, seems clear they bid on almost every single Cummins part. CityView would have bid on every one of these parts. So in this case, you would have had multiple bidders on almost all of those line items, and whoever had the lowest price, that's who's getting that item.
All right, thank you. That explains it. So I'm happy to move this item as well. And
Questions? Any other questions? Comments? No? So moved by Commissioner Crisanti. All in favor? Opposed? None? That carries. Item 20, procurement authorization, supply of NOR brake parts for up to a 3-year term, held by Commissioner Crisanti. Go for it. Questions?
All right. So on this one here, just want some clarity, unless I missed it in the report. I just see the one bidder. Is that correct?
So this is they're the only supplier of these particular kind of brake parts. So yes, you're correct. It is a sole source supplier. These are for brake parts on the 30 to 40-year-old LRVs and ALRVs and CLRVs, our old streetcar fleet. So, I'm sorry? And nobody else makes them, and we're forced to deal with them. If you see in the report, you'll see that the bulk of their price increase is due to a change in the Canadian dollar versus the sterling. And in fact, we got their prices from them. We went back to them, and they basically lowered the first-year price from about a 1.8% price increase to about 0.2%. And they basically told us this is the best price we can give you, and we're really at a point where we can't go any further. What's interesting is, if you looked at the price of the euro to Canadian dollar, the Canadian dollar depreciated by 6%, and yet over the next 3 years, these parts are going up about 5.3% in total. So it's pretty much the same price. They're the only supplier. I can't even say in town because they're not in town. But I think we got the best price we can get on this one, and the whole price differential can be explained by currency changes.
So do we from time to time check to ensure that it's always the one supplier and no one else is coming to the market?
So we'll do all kinds of things. When we go out for bids for LRVs and for buses, we do the same kind of thing. Same thing with subways. We will always ask for parts lists, and where we get parts lists and we're able to do it, we'll go out for bids on those parts. In many cases, these manufacturers They have agency agreements with distributors, so there's only one distributor, or they're the distributor. And so we do all kinds of things. We try to reverse engineer where we can, but that's a complicated and complex process. If we reverse engineer a part, we can then go out to a jobber and try and get a better price. For some of these real old vehicles, we're actually happy that there's an original manufacturer who's still there making the part, because, you know, something like brake parts, I'm not sure that's something you could ever reverse engineer and go to a jobber on. If it's that safety critical, you're kind of stuck with the original manufacturer. But if it was things like seats or windows or other things that aren't safety critical components, you have way more flexibility on that. But in some respects, this is what the transit business purchasing is all about. Some of these people, I think they build their vehicles just so they can sell us parts for the next 30 years.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, that's true. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to move this, and I think I have one more.
Let me just see if there are any other questions. Campbell? Okay.
So,
which Vince? This is a Vince and Vince show.
Yeah, which one?
Okay, so staff recommendation, you're moving Commissioner Crisanti. All in favor of that? No opposed, that carries. Item 21 was another procurement authorization, supply of West Code HVAC parts.
So, again, Mr. Chair, this looks to me like a report where we just have one supplier. Would you agree? This is a sole source again? I don't see any other suppliers here.
So this again is a sole source one. These are the parts that we're going to use to solve our hot to train problem. One thing I would draw is if you go to page 3, in the very last paragraph, you'll see there's an overall price reduction from the last time we bought these things from of 19%. So that doesn't mean anything other than it's a 19% lower cost than before. Right. And for a sole source, you don't usually see a 19% drop in price.
Right, I was just going to comment on that. That's quite interesting. I saw that as well. And I, again, well, you answered in the previous time, but we continue to make efforts to try and identify other suppliers as we move forward.
We do this wherever we can. I think what you've got here is an issue of, you know, we needed a few of these a year for a long time, and we got really into trouble last year, and now we're buying a large quantity, and I think that's why you're seeing the price discount. There aren't other suppliers of this particular kind of HVAC unit, but if there were, I mean, we'd scour the marketplace to see if there's somebody there. We can't find anybody else who makes these things, and it's sort of they're an engineered component into these vehicles, so it's got to fit perfectly. It's not like you can necessarily go buy a substitute part, so that's why we're recommending going with West Code.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to move this, but also as noted a couple of minutes ago, if we can ask for, you know, a progress report on how we're performing with each of these contracts that we spoke to today, which I believe staff agreed to.
Okay, great. So that's staff recommendation has been moved by Commissioner Crisanti with also an understanding that staff will report back at the appropriate time, and maybe that's something you can convene with them on too to make sure when that is most appropriate.
Just to confirm, would you like us to report back directly to you, or do you want it to come to the board?
To the board, so
okay.
that everyone can see it in 6 months.
Okay.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay. All in favor? No opposed, that carries. So there was a motion to go back into camera on item number 8. So we will move into the committee of the whole by Commissioner Mihevc. We actually did. Are you asking for a revote? So we did vote on it. So a motion to move into camera. All in favor? Opposed? Noted. Campbell's opposed. So we'll just clear the room and we'll get started in a few minutes. Yeah, there's a few procurement motions that Commissioner Crisanti wants to add to the agenda. Yeah. So what are you doing tomorrow, Don? What are you doing Monday? Shredding stuff. Okay, so we're back in public? Okay, so we're on item number 8. I'm assuming there are no public questions or anyone who wants to speak to that yet again. So could I have someone move the recommendations, or 1, to approve recommendations set out in the confidential attachment, 2, to authorize release of information in that attachment subject to labor relations confidentiality upon staff communicating to the various TTC unions the program design, and 3, not release the information as set out in the confidential attachment that is still subject to solicitor-client privilege. Moved by Commissioner Min Wong. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Motion to adjourn by Campbell. All in favor? That carries.